It's the year 1960, and you've just embezzled $40,000 from your job, and now you're driving through the dark in the rain, and your windshield wipers suck, I guess, because it's 1960 wipers. But might I suggest you drive past that creepy motel and truck it the last 15 miles real slow and careful like to your boyfriend's house. That's right, this is Open Mic Night of the Living Dead. And this week, we're talking about Psycho.
The creature's creeping right behind you. I hope you finally find a little slice of peace and light. 'Cause it comes crashing down tonight. Welcome to the open mic. When we call your name, you'll die. But there's no need to dread. This is the open mic night of the living dead.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's good.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm okay. I really like this movie.
Yay!
It's a good movie to talk about.
This is Rachel.
And this is John.
We got hitched because Rachel kidnapped me from an open mic night and held me in her basement for 4 months until what's that syndrome called you get? Where you
Stockholm Syndrome?
Yes, this marriage is a product of Stockholm Syndrome. But during that time, we discovered our love for horror movies and music, and we created this podcast. Is that fair?
Yeah, that was a nice little summary of our lives up until this point.
That really ties it all together.
Really does.
But today, we're talking about one of the best movies ever.
Seriously.
What was your first experience with Psycho?
So I remember the first time I watched this movie, which is unusual for me. There's not many movies I can say that about, but this is one of them. I got it on VHS. It would have been either 1999 or 2000, which was my first year of college. I had it on VHS because I specifically wanted to start watching more classic horror movies that I had never watched. And I watched it in my mom's apartment in her tiny little living room. And this was one of the times when we might have actually been just blocks apart, actually. My mother lived in Medford for a brief time, very close to, and you were still in college. Or no, you were in high school. Never mind. No, my freshman year of college, you were still in high school. You're such a baby.
You're so old.
I'm so old. But it was I was on her futon, and I remember watching it and thinking it was cool, but also wishing I had seen it for the first time when it first came out 40 years before, because I could tell that it was really scary. But at this point, I had seen so many other horror movies that were really, really scary that it didn't scare me that much. I did not appreciate it the way I do now.
Yeah, tell me kind of what you said after we watched it last night.
I mean, which part? The part how every time I watch it, it makes me want to watch more black and white movies?
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me want to watch more movies like this. But my problem with this and other black and white movies and older movies in general is that my barrier for watching them seems to be a little bit higher. Like, my motivation for watching a movie from this time period generally needs to be there needs to be something to kind of push me into it. I'm never like, I just feel like watching a movie from the 1950s. But then once I watch an older movie, I'm like, the acting is so good. The cinematography is so good. I want to see more.
Well, my recollections of my first experiences with this movie are not as crystal clear as yours. I know I eventually had this on VHS as well. It was a weird copy, if I remember correctly. Like, the artwork was really strange. I wish I could describe it, but I can't. But I definitely watched this back in high school for the first time. And I remember thinking it was cool and that I liked it. And I definitely watched it more than once in that time. But I certainly did not appreciate it like I do now. Like you were saying, like, to me, this movie is like full throttle now when I'm watching it. Like it moves from part to part
Yeah.
really artfully. It really never lets up. And obviously it sets everybody up for a big surprise halfway through, which is a good place for me to remind listeners that this is one of our deep dive episodes. There will be all the spoilers.
So many spoilers.
If you are listening to this and you somehow have not yet watched Psycho and do not want it to be spoiled, now's the time to pause the podcast. Go find Psycho on your streamers or buy yourself Blu-ray copy on the interwebs. It'll be here tomorrow if you've got Amazon Prime.
Or go to the library. I bet they have it.
That's a better idea.
Yeah, go to the library or look on Hoopla. If your library has Hoopla, you might be able to watch it on there. Anyway, you should watch it if you haven't yet.
Yeah. But anyway, that's your warning. This movie's so awesome.
It is. I wanted to add one more warning that we don't usually add, but I was thinking about this as I was doing prep for this, and that is to say that we are not classic movie buffs or film students of any kind. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
That we love movies and we love horror movies in particular. There's so much ink spilled, both actual and virtual, about this film over the last 65 years. We are going to miss stuff. There's a good chance we might make mistakes. Especially when it comes to the cast and we just are not as familiar with this era of filmmaking either. So I want to apologize ahead of time for us not being experts, but we do really love this movie. And as we said, makes us want to know more about this time of movie making, and certainly has had me add a bunch of movies to my to-watch list to kind of fill in the holes. So just wanted to put that out there. Not only are there spoilers, but there's probably going to be some unsophisticated takes from two non-film studies majors.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Definitely not our era, but it definitely, influences everything after it for sure. And I was saying to Rachel last night, you could have an entire, a podcast series about this movie. And we're still trying to cover it in the amount of time we usually cover movies in a deep dive if we can pull it off.
Which is hopefully under 2 hours.
Yes, yeah. So we're definitely going to miss a lot of stuff. We're not going to be getting some of the in-depth detail that you might be able to find. I think Rachel said there's a 90-minute movie documentary about just the shower scene. So, we'll talk about a little bit about that, but, we can't talk 90 minutes about the shower scene.
We could, but then you might not come back.
Or maybe we're missing our audience by not doing it, but...
Who knows? We got to be us.
We got to stick to our format.
We do. And with that being said, do you want to talk a little bit about the distribution and reception and response to this movie?
Yes. So, Psycho. 1960, released on June 16th of that year, directed by very unknown director. Just kidding. Alfred Hitchcock. The screenplay was written by Joseph Stefano, which was based on the 1959 novel by Robert Bloch. The movie clocks in at around 109 minutes. And like I said, I think the pacing's awesome. I think if we showed it to our 14-year-old, she might disagree. She's
our stand-in for Gen Z.
Yeah.
Gen Alpha, really. She's right on the cusp between the two, but that's how we gauge the interest that the younger generations might have. But yeah, I think like me when I was 18, she would probably not be all that impressed by this movie. Yet. I think maybe in the future she might surprise us, or when she's older maybe.
Or maybe we're underestimating her.
Maybe we are.
But at this point, Alfred Hitchcock had a lot of big hits, which I'll get into a bit more later. But this was a divergence from the films he had been creating. This movie comes right after his famous movie North by Northwest. But he decided to make this low-budget black and white film, which at the time the budget was approximately $807,000, which is about $8.8 million in today's dollars. At the box office, it made about $32 million. So $807,000 versus $32 million. And that $32 million translates into over $350 million today. So it was a huge box office success. And one of the things Hitchcock did to manage the budget was one thing he did. He had this really unusual deal at the time that he made pre-production. He gave up or at least sharply reduced his normal upfront director fee in exchange for a large share of the film's profits, which was a rare arrangement, especially for that time. And this bet on the back end structure is regularly cited as one of the most famous profit participation deals of its era, and obviously was a very successful gamble for Hitchcock. And the low-cost production approach, which included a lean crew, the black and white filming, controlled schedule, helped make the profit share especially lucrative once the film did become a hit. I'll get a bit more into the reception in a minute, but it was nominated for 4 Academy Awards I don't think it won anything, but it was nominated for Best Director, Best Supporting Actress, being Janet Leigh, Best Cinematography for Black and White, and Best Art Direction, Set Direction, Black and White. I feel like it should have won Set Direction at minimum. But
yeah, seriously. All those birds.
And this is another one of the movies we've covered that was added to the U.S. National Film Registry. I'm now just clocking your birds comment. It was added to the U.S. National Film Registry in 1992 by the Library of Congress for being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. Now, in terms of the reception, the critical reception at its release, Psycho was obviously a major audience success. Like I've already said, it was a cultural event, but it did split critics at the time, which I guess doesn't surprise me very much, especially after hearing how critics have addressed other films we've covered. But some critics praised its craft and suspense, while others condemned it as lurid, sick, or just too much. But obviously, over time, it's become considered one of the most influential suspense horror films ever made, and a blueprint for the modern horror structure. But back in 1960, if you were opening up your newspaper that was hopefully tossed craftfully onto your front porch and didn't end up under a bush in your yard, I'm just imagining such a wonderful time, 1960. I'm sure it was horrible for tons and tons of people, but it was also I don't know. I wasn't there, but it sounds pretty great. But if you were looking in your newspaper, you might have, or magazine. I'm saying newspaper, and then I see my first quotes from Time magazine.
Nice.
The Times reviewer complained what is offered instead is merely gruesome, and called it one of the messiest, most nauseating murders ever filmed. Obviously talking about the old shower scene.
Jeez. Must have been real hard for him as time went on.
Time.
Shut up.
And Bosley Crowther of the New York Times dismissed the ending, saying the consequence is his denouement falls quite flat for us. He also took a swipe at the explanation, saying, frankly, we feel his explanations are a bit of leg pulling, which I could see that perspective from then. It actually does seem more plausible now. It's not exact science, the whole explanation for Norman Bates's actions, but it seems very plausible to me on a surface level basis. But of course, there were also positive reviews at the time. Harrison's Reports, which was a trade paper, said they will love this Hitchcock shocker and praised the craft of the filmmaking, saying the direction is great, the music is very effective, the photography likewise. And Andrew Saris of Village Voice declared, Hitchcock is the most daring avant-garde filmmaker in America today. Which I think, how many years later are we now? 66?
65. Came out in 1960, right?
And it's 2026?
Well, right, I know, but June. So I was thinking
yes.
It will be 66.
65. I'll give you that. Good mathing. I'm not allowed to math around these parts. But I think 65 years later, we can all certainly agree with Mr. Saris that Hitchcock was the most daring avant-garde filmmaker in America at that time. Now, that was the the critics' reviews, very simplified, obviously, but the audience and theater impact was also very, very interesting and different than film-going experiences up to that time. One thing Hitchcock did, aside from creating the movie, is he had a lot of control over the release of the film, and he pushed theaters to enforce no late admissions. And reviewers explicitly noted the policy was tied to how sensational the ending played. And the reason this was such a big deal in 1960 was, for much of cinema history, from what I found, many venues, it was called like the continuous show model, that films would play in a repeating cycle. So you'd go into theater A and such movie would be playing sort of on a loop. And patrons could drop in at any time and basically stay through to catch what they missed.
Oh, interesting.
But by contrast, Psycho is widely described as the first film sold in the U.S. explicitly on a no-one admitted after-start basis, making showtime punctuality part of the event and part of the marketing hook. It was basically show up on time or you're not going to be let in because everything is so sensational. You need to see it in sequence. There are also, we don't usually talk about scandalous moments or firsts for movies, and I didn't know a great place to put it. But is here okay?
Yeah.
We didn't talk about this beforehand. I usually get all my permissions in advance. But an important note, too, I'm sure a lot of our listeners have heard of some of these. Psycho did this thing first or did that thing first. A lot of those claims might be exaggerated online or overstated. So I'm not going to say that any of these things were a first. Some of them might have been, but it's more likely that they were just portrayed and very unusual in sort of what would be considered a major motion picture at that time. Well, you must know a couple of these.
Oh, yeah. And I knew these the first time I saw this movie back in the year 2000. And that was part of the appeal. I'm not sure. I mean, the internet was it was a baby back then. And so I think I did learn these things on the internet or maybe in a book about horror movies. But yeah, I knew a couple of these.
What's one example?
The first time a toilet was flushed.
Yes.
On screen.
Flushing toilet, often highlighted as a notorious scandal for that era.
Error. Your Rhode Island is showing.
My Rhode Island is showing.
From your mother.
My mother. Obviously, toilet flushing on screen is pretty mundane by today's standards.
Yeah.
But was seen as shockingly improper in mainstream film at the time. And let me tell you, just disgusts me. I just can't stand. I usually just skip right over that section. I don't need to see a toilet flushing. I don't look at it in real life. I flush and run. That's why you can hear me. You can, like, if you hear the toilet flush and then and it's me running out.
And then sometimes like a as you run into something.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining, or like you trip over your pants.
I pull up my pants before I flush. I'm not crazy. I do sometimes run into the door, though. I forget to open the door before I run out. Rachel will come into the bathroom, find me just passed out, knocked out on the floor after having flushed. Listen, nobody's perfect. I'm close, but...
You're so close. You're so close.
Well, let me warn listeners. If you would like to enact the flush and run method, please be sure you have a really well planned exit strategy.
That's really important.
It's paramount to the flush and run. What's another example of something that was lurid for that time?
Janet Leigh in her bra.
Oh my God, I couldn't believe it.
It was a big deal. Not just once, several times.
This is the only place I've seen a woman in a bra.
I always say you're a really good liar, but right now, not so much.
What are you saying? It's like a nice bra, too.
I mean, yeah, really fancy.
She must have got it at Saks Fifth in Phoenix. And so, yeah, it's really it's the opening scene we see Janet Leigh in her bra, which pushed the boundary of sexual frankness for a mainstream thriller. Can you think of another thing that was new and unusual for this movie? Maybe plot related is what I'm thinking.
I mean, was it the fact that she was unmarried and was with a man in a hotel room?
I mean, that certainly is notable as well. I was thinking about the fact that this is the first time somebody kind of did the Scream thing, like the Drew Barrymore of it all. They hired mainstream star.
Oh, yes.
And you think that you're going to be following her through the course of this movie. And then around the halfway point,
45 minutes,
she's killed.
Yeah, big old switcheroo. And we can certainly talk about that when we get further into story time and some of the themes. And, was that just Hitchcock putting one over on his audience and being like, ha, got you? Or is that actually a crucial part of the duality of Marion and Norman? I don't know, but we can talk about that maybe if we get to it. There's so much stuff to talk about. But yeah, you thought, Janet Leigh was by far the biggest star. Anthony Perkins was also, but you would expect, you were not expecting her to go away.
And regardless of the intention of it, it was certainly destabilizing and shocking for audiences.
Yeah, completely.
There's also the nudity suggestion and the shower violence.
This side boob?
This is my side boob. And sort of the bathroom realism and bodily routine, which is also funny. I'm thinking about how when Norman Bates is showing Marion her cabin, quote unquote.
Yeah.
He can't even say there's the bathroom. He's like, there's over there.
Yeah, because oh yeah, that's a good point. I do remember noticing that this time around.
But this movie includes bathroom imagery and behavior that Hollywood typically avoided or softened up until this point. And just more generally, the psychosexual abnormality as horror, really bringing taboo psychology into the center of a popular entertainment feature, was different for American films up to this point. I would say that I have seen some like Italian or other foreign films from around this time, and they were just like always, they were a bit bolder and more graphic and gory.
Yeah, I know you said that he was kind of the most visionary making movies at this time, but Stanley Kubrick also had Spartacus that came out in 1960, which I think would be an interesting path, not for today, but I think it would be really interesting to look at those two in comparison, because talk about another visionary filmmaker. He was earlier in his career, though, I think, than Hitchcock at that point, but he was making movies already, but Clockwork Orange didn't come out until 1973, and I feel like that was pretty transgressive in a way that Spartacus was not, if I remember. But again, not a film historian.
Well, and I didn't mean to imply that he was the only visionary filmmaker, but I do think by comparison, Hitchcock was really well developed in his career by now, and I do think even though Spartacus was by no means Kubrick's first film, I don't even think of that when I'm thinking of his big films.
Right.
But again, that's partially due to my lack of scholarship in that area. Speaking of, that was a good transition for me, and I'm ruining it now by talking. But I was going to mention other notable movies in theaters in the U.S. in 1960.
Yeah.
The top of the list was Spartacus from Stanley Kubrick, Billy Wilder's The Apartment, the OG Ocean's 11. So, you're not getting your George Clooney's or your Brad Damon's or your Matt Affleck's.
Shut up.
Ben Affleck wasn't in that, was he? I don't think. But
I don't think so.
I'm now drawing a blank. I love that movie, the remake. But the original Ocean's 11 had the Brat Pack, which sounds even cooler. Might need to check it out at some point. It also had, you could be going to the theater in 1960 and see H.G. Wells's The Time Machine. And then it actually was released in 1960 in the UK, came out the following year in the US, but a movie that's often brought up by horror scholars when talking about 1960 is Peeping Tom, which you have not seen yet.
I know. And actually, I was just literally 15 minutes ago thinking, since I'm so... I'm in that mode where I'm like, I want to watch old movies. That Peeping Tom has been towards the top of my list for a while. It might be good to do that soon.
I've got a couple that would be fun to follow up with, which, because there were other horror movies released in 1960 as well, I also have some from other countries, or horror movies that may have been released in 1960s elsewhere but didn't come to the US until later. First is the French film Eyes Without a Face, which we were talking about we need to watch.
Ooh, yeah.
Black Sunday came from Italy, Mario Bava film.
Oh.
And we were talking about that the other night. We just recently watched the original Piranha.
Yeah.
And Barbara Steele is in that movie. She is the star of Black Sunday.
Oh, cool. I liked her.
18 years prior to Piranha.
Nice.
Also, The City of the Dead, not the Lucio Fulci movie City of the Living Dead. House of Usher, which was a Corman, Vincent Price movie. Village of the Damned from the UK, along with Brides of Dracula from the UK. 13 Ghosts, the original.
Didn't know there was an original.
And also the original Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which I think also was Corman.
I wouldn't be surprised. I can't speak with any kind of authority on that, though.
But 1960 is a really interesting year for film, and particularly horror movies. It's kind of a pivot point where, you know, a lot of the horror movies still carried sort of the gothic DNA of the past.
Yeah.
But
like Hammer horror and all the Universal monsters.
Yeah.
And then I actually found a really great quotation from a film historian, Reynold Humphreys, who said, one word can sum up the shift from classic horror to modern horror: Psycho. So there were a lot of films at this time, but Psycho really is the film that marks this shift from from a lot of things. And I'll talk more about that in a bit too. But this shift from kind of classic horror to modern horror happened in 1960. And of course, we've talked about, we've done Night of the Living Dead, which was 1968, right? And then we've got The Exorcist in 72. And 73. So close. So close. There's just so much that starts kind of ramping up from 1960 and on. So yeah, so cool to see kind of this turning point in cinema.
Well, it's interesting to compare this to Halloween from 1978, which I think we talked about it in that episode, how that it was really a transformation to all of a sudden the threat can be in your neighborhood and it could be in your house, which, you know, marked sort of a line. And it's interesting because maybe I said this before, Halloween is 18 years after Psycho, and then Scream is 18 years after Halloween.
Oh.
Sort of generational landmarks.
Yeah, and actually I had included this in kind of some of the themes later, but I think it's appropriate here talking about context and the impact that Psycho had in the cinematic landscape. This is the first time I've got to use my Christianity and Horror Cinema book that I got for Christmas. And so to really look academically at some of this stuff. And one of the citations in there is from a book called Monsters and Mad Scientists, A Cultural History of the Horror Movie. And the author Andrew Tudor notes that Psycho marks the passage from secure to paranoid horrors. So movies before 1960 presume a world that's ultimately subject to successful human intervention, that humans can do something to change things, to make the world better, to solve the problem, to defeat the monster. And later films portray the threat as unpredictable, as out of control, as coming from inside our very psyches, from inside the house, from in the safe neighborhood, right? So Psycho marks, and not that it was the only movie that did this. Peeping Tom also obviously had just in the same year. But yeah, when you think about how instead this seemingly benign, safe situation instead is even the fact that the motivation for the murder is not money, but instead is Norman's psychosis, right? That it is a shifting of the way things work in horror, which, I mean, we could do another whole couple hours on why this happened in the 60s, right? Why was there this shift? If horror is a reflection of the anxieties and traumas going on in society at large. What happened then? But we don't have time.
And I think what you're saying too ties into the point I was trying to make, I think, when kind of comparing it to Halloween, the threat coming to the neighborhood, the house. This was kind of that shift from the Gothic kind of threat out in the fields and the castle on your big journey to normal life itself becoming unsafe. That you're obviously Marion Crane's journey is a little unusual in the fact that, you know, she's made this terrible decision leading her to the Bates Motel. But, you know, traveling on the road, having to pull over for the night at a motel, that's sort of normal life and wasn't necessarily the type of threat that you were seeing in horror movies up to that point.
Yeah, I actually have a great quotation from Janet Leigh. She was asked if it was true that she doesn't take showers anymore. And she said, it's actually honestly true. And not because of the shooting of it, it was the seeing of it. It never dawned on me how truly vulnerable we are. But that's what Hitchcock did. A shower, a bird, all these things that are absolutely ordinary, he made extraordinary. Which I think kind of encapsulates what you're saying there.
Well, and it's funny too. I don't know if it's because of this movie, maybe it is, but one of my many irrational fears over time, many of which have abated and been replaced with other fears.
More rational ones.
I always was a little bit perturbed by a closed shower curtain in like a dark bathroom. Like if I was going into a bathroom and the curtain was completely drawn. Is drawn open or closed?
Drawn is closed.
Completely drawn. I did not like it. I had often needed to take a peek before I would turn my back on it for any sort of bathroom related purposes.
I can tell you that one of our children, at least when they were slightly younger, did have a fear of things behind the shower curtain and had never seen Psycho, and still neither of them has seen Psycho. So I think that might just be a primal fear. But there it is, Hitchcock tapping into that primal fear and making it terrifying for all of us.
Yeah, 15 years before Spielberg made sharks scary, Hitchcock brought the fear right into your own bathroom.
Yeah. Want to look at some ratings real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So IMDb, 8.5 out of 10.
Which lines up well with my rating.
Letterboxd, 4.3 out of 5. I was surprised. I thought it might be even higher. And then my personal rating, 4.5 out of 5. Almost perfect. And honestly, this is one of those that might bump up to a 5 for me.
Yeah.
I just hadn't watched it for a while, I think, when I rated it. So
I gave it a 9 out of 10 and wondered whether it might get bumped up even higher.
Yeah, there's a few movies I have that are 5s, and I think this I might have to bump it up. And then for our podcast rating, do you want to explain that real quick for those who are unfamiliar with it?
1's complete trash, not worth watching. 2 is the grand majority of horror films.
Like 90%.
From good to great. Like it, love it, would watch it again, would recommend. And then 3 is the top tier films, the ones that have made a difference in the genre, ones that if you're a horror fan, you absolutely must see it. And even if you're not a horror fan.
I was about to say, even if you're not a horror fan, maybe we should start an actual list somewhere of our movies that are 3s. So when people find out we do a horror podcast, they're like, I hate horror. Be like, really? Try this list. Yeah, this is a 3, right? Yeah. Obviously in 100%. Yeah.
3+.
3+.
I'm not even sure I'll give any other movie a 3+ that we ever cover.
Wow.
I don't know.
Yeah, you got to give it a 10 then. I can't see you not giving it. You've never given anything a 3+. We've had 3s. The Thing was a 3, right?
I don't know. Let's not get into that.
Okay, now. Fine.
But with our ratings behind us, obviously we put this at the very top.
Yeah.
Should we get a little bit more into story time?
Let's do it.
Go a little mad sometimes, especially when we know the story. If you listen close for just a minute, I promise that it won't be boring. This is story time. Story time. I should have gone with something a little more 60s. I don't know
Probably.
why I went with like that weird early hip hop.
Like 90s rap almost?
More like 80s.
Yeah, that was like early
like
90s.
Sugar Hill Gang.
Brought me back to like middle school dances, 1991.
I played my band that I played drums in college. We opened for Sugar Hill Gang once. They were much older then, and they all wore Sugar Hill Gang shirts when they performed.
That's pretty cool.
It was quite an experience.
It must have been an experience. I'm sorry I interrupted your late 80s, early 90s rap about story time.
Nope.
What? Okay, here's a summary of the plot from IMDb. It's so funny sometimes, the different summaries that are out there, but we'll try this one. A secretary on the run for embezzlement takes refuge at a secluded California motel owned by a repressed man and his overbearing mother. On the run for embezzlement, I guess, is true.
Yeah.
Just sounds, I mean, maybe after embezzling, I don't know. The construction is strange. And then Letterboxd says, when larcenous real estate clerk Marion Crane goes on the lam with a wad of cash in hopes of starting a new life, she ends up at the notorious Bates Motel, where manager Norman Bates cares for his housebound mother.
That's even worse.
I know. They both kind of suck.
There's nothing notorious about the Bates Motel. It's notorious for us.
Right. Like that was kind
fans.
of, no, it's not notorious in the world of the film. I mean, although the sheriff does say there's all that business there 10 years ago, right? So
right,
like
but that was the sheriff of that small town.
Of that small town, exactly. Also, I don't think I ever realized, sorry, this is totally out of alignment, but I never realized that she was so close to Sam when she stopped at the Bates Motel.
15 miles.
Like, so freaking close.
Mm-hmm.
That's so sad. Although then we wouldn't have the movie, so oh well, not that sad.
How's this? Real estate secretary Marion Crane takes to the road after stealing $40,000 from her job. En route, Rachel's nodding.
I'm nodding.
Like sarcastically.
Second one.
En route, she takes shelter from the rain in a vacant. Well, you know what?
This is harder than we thought.
I didn't really think about it. I just kind of started going.
I know. I think so did the people who wrote the summaries for IMDb and Letterboxd.
En route, she takes shelter in a small street-side motel where she encounters its strange and unusual owner. And his mommy.
You could just say, owner and his mommy. Owners, though, I think would be also appropriate.
I don't know if you did this when you were taking notes as we were watching, but I wrote the notes as if the mother existed until we found out that she didn't.
I mean, I think that you can make an argument that she does exist.
Right.
As a character, and she does exist as a character in this film, even
that's
though.
Fair.
So I think that's. I don't think I even thought about it. I think it was Norman and Norman's mother, even though they. I don't want. You guys are warned for spoilers, but even though they share a body, I wonder if there's a person who watches movies, because some people don't watch movies at all, but if there's a person who watches movies who doesn't know that, and I guess there must be a lot, even though Psycho has kind of entered the cultural language, right? Like the sound of the knife and the showers, like all of that is kind of written, like even if you don't know, it's like our teenager knowing what's in the box means, even though she had never seen the movie. Right? Like it's like the same kind of thing. Like the knife in the shower is kind of ubiquitous, but.
Bet she doesn't know the twist to this movie though.
I bet she doesn't. So not like she listens to our podcast, so we don't have to worry about it.
No.
Someday she will. Maybe, hey, 35-year-old child, 20 years later, listening to your parents' old podcast. How you doing?
I hope you do just a compilation of my greatest moments at my funeral from the podcast.
Oh my God.
And then have like a bunch of like musicians, hopefully famous ones.
Oh, yeah.
They each do different songs.
From the podcast?
Yeah, like Miley Cyrus.
Oh, hell yeah.
She's who I think of first when I hear my songs.
Me too. 100%. I'm on it, babe.
But if she could do it as Hannah Montana. Anyway, should I get a bit into the production?
Let's get into it. Yeah, production. Tell me about the production of this movie. I know this might overlap some with later stuff, but yeah, give us the basics.
And, I'm trying to keep it somewhat trim. Hopefully we have the opportunity to do another Hitchcock film in the future. I do think thrillers are acceptable for a horror podcast as long as they kind of lean that direction. And so I think there's a few other Hitchcock movies that could qualify someday down the road. But Alfred Hitchcock, he's an English film director, not a Hollywood director. He became one later. He was born in London, England in 1899. The year of, I wonder if there was like a musical artist in the 1880s who did a song about partying like it's 1899. Anyway, Alfred Hitchcock, he passed away in 1980, but he's one of the most influential directors in cinema history and was often nicknamed the master of suspense. And Hitchcock's early career began in the British film industry during the silent era, which is really, I think, telling of how he eventually crafted his films. And in these British silent films, he worked in technical and design-oriented roles, including title card design. And he learned through that process how movies communicate information visually. So really, he was coming from the pre-talkies and really seeing how stories could be portrayed visually through the medium of film. He developed a reputation for precision. I'm having a hard time talking today. I said that last time. Maybe I just have a hard time talking. But
could be.
He developed a reputation for precision, pre-planning, and visual storytelling, traits that became central to his directing style. In terms of influences and artistic DNA, he's often cited as having German expressionism influences, which I feel like this is not the first director we've heard that about. I feel like we need to get into the German expressionist film era. So
add it to the list.
Yeah. And it's visual psychology, which involved a lot of the high contrast, distorted emotional space. He used a lot of his silent film grammar in his influences, suspense built through editing, framing, and pure image logic, and the idea that cinema can manipulate audience attention like a magic trick, which I love that.
That's really cool.
And it makes such sense. I mean, that this movie is a perfect example of that. Eventually, obviously, he transitioned from British cinema to Hollywood, and his last film sort of his British era, so to speak, was a movie called Jamaica Inn from 1939, and his first Hollywood film was Rebecca in 1940, which won the Academy Award for Best Picture in 1941. So he really hit the ground running when he came into Hollywood. And his move from Britain to the United States was not unusual at that time. It was part of a broader pattern of elite British filmmakers being essentially recruited by Hollywood and being drawn in by the bigger budgets that Hollywood offered, the bigger reach of their distribution, and the larger scale studio opportunities. And just a couple of interesting kind of life career moments for Hitchcock. He built a brand around suspense and shock that was so strong it became a cultural identity. And this was helped by his public persona he created, or maybe not created, but portrayed and presented in his television presence, particularly like in his show Alfred Hitchcock Presents, where he would sort of announce the show at the beginning, or introduce it, I should say. I remember some old Looney Tunes cartoons having some like nods to Hitchcock.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like Porky Pig's silhouette, because Hitchcock would start with his silhouette.
Yes. I do remember that. Oh, crazy.
But by the late 1950s, he had an extraordinary run of landmark films, and Psycho arrives as a deliberate rupture to that run. It's smaller, nastier, more intimate, and more transgressive than the glamorous thrillers immediately before it. And like I said, North by Northwest came right before this.
Have you seen that?
I have not, but I have it.
Me either. So
it's supposed to be awesome. I'm sorry, listeners, for those who are air punching me. This is
why we caveated this episode. I don't think caveat's an active verb. Anyway, this is why we did that, because we are not caught up on our classic film stuff. So please don't.
But I've seen several of the films leading up to it beforehand of his, like Rear Window.
We've seen Rear Window and The Birds.
I have not seen The Birds, but I've seen Vertigo. Have you seen Vertigo?
I don't think I've seen Vertigo.
His late 1950s films were all preceding Psycho were polished, expansive studio thrillers. And again, this is after he's moved to Hollywood, with major event movie energy like Vertigo and North by Northwest. But with Psycho, he intentionally pivoted into something cheaper, meaner, more immediate, and more confrontational. It wasn't small because of any restrictions on Hitchcock or from the studio or anything. It was small as a strategy to make something that felt more raw and dangerous, to lean into the shock and taboo, and to create a movie that behaved like a trap, not a spectacle.
So many horror movie directors are limited by small budgets, and that forces their creativity. It's really interesting to think that he chose a smaller palette to work from purposefully.
Well, and I don't know if when we watched it last night, it automatically went into a behind the scenes afterwards.
Yeah.
On the disc that we have, and you were kind of falling asleep.
True.
Which was not unusual. Not unusual for Rachel to fall asleep. No. But I wish I could remember who was speaking when they were talking about this. And it might have been the writer. I'm not sure. But somebody basically said that Hitchcock was talking about how all these lower budget thrillers, suspense movies are being made, and he didn't think all of them were very great. Or he didn't, I'm not sure how he put it. But he basically was like, what if great filmmaker, I'm sure he didn't say that either, but basically what if like an experienced filmmaker made one of these lower budget films? So it was kind of an experiment like that as well. And then tons of his movies were in color, which is something that I didn't realize when I first watched this back in high school. I thought this was a black and white movie from a black and white time, but many of his movies prior to this film were, in color. But the choice of black and white helped keep costs down and supported the harsher, colder tone of the film, while avoiding also the more graphic color realism from the gore was another thing that he wanted to avoid.
Right, because in black and white, you can get away with more at this time period, right?
Yes, absolutely. It reminds me of when I just went and I took our oldest to see Kill Bill, The Whole Bloody Affair. And we were just interrupted by our oldest as I was just about speaking about how I took her to see Kill Bill, The Whole Bloody Affair, which is Kill Bill 1 and 2 put together the way Quentin Tarantino intended, with some changes in a couple of places and a couple of extended scenes. But speaking about black and white for gore, if you've seen the first Kill Bill, there's the scene at the super cool The House of a Thousand Leaves or something like that is the name of the place, kind of near the end, where the bride has the big showdown versus the crazy 88 that goes on for 10 minutes at least. In the original, it switches to black and white for a lot of that scene for that reason, to keep it at an R rating because there's so much blood. But in The Whole Bloody Affair, he wasn't worried about ratings and it's all in color. But anyway, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, Hitchcock wasn't just directing Psycho, he engineered it as a controlled audience experience, from the marketing to the theater policies. And it was really an event. And I think you're right, it would have been super cool back then, especially if you were into sort of this more macabre type thing, to be able to go and see it. The question is, would you get there in time?
I would. I'm mostly on time.
And the screenwriter was Joseph Stefano.
I think Stefano.
He's an American screenwriter. He won the Edgar Award for Psycho's screenplay, which was an award presented by the Mystery Writers of America. Did you have notes on sort of the difference between the novel, which was written by Robert Bloch?
I didn't.
And from that behind the scenes that we were watching last night, there was one point sort of in the development where they put down the book, set it aside, and kind of never referenced it again. So there are a lot of differences. In terms of how the novel influenced the screenplay, the film retains the core architecture of Bloch's story: a woman on the run, a remote motel, a disturbed young man under the shadow of mother, though I think in the novel he's older, more middle-aged, and a mystery that pivots into psychological horror. But there's major ways that the screenplay diverges from the novel. Norman Bates' characterization is different. The film's Norman is generally presented as more outwardly sympathetic, and Boy Next Door, which Stefano talked about in that behind the scenes, how they really wanted to make him more sympathetic than he was in the novel, because in the novel, Norman is more overtly unsettling and coarse. The tone and emphasis is different. The film leans harder into cinematic misdirection and suspense mechanics, becoming a formal exercise in audience manipulation. And then the screenplay tightens and refines story beats into a cleaner Hitchcock machine. And what the screenplay does exceptionally well, thankful to Stefano, is the misdirection. And I think they actually had somebody write a version of the screenplay first before Stefano was brought on board, and they thought it was pretty boring. So Stefano came in, completely redid it, really dialed up the misdirection, the crime thriller setup, the psychological horror of it all. It also creates sort of an audience complicity that you're pulled into Marion's fear and her rationalizations, and then you're punished for caring. And then the escalation, like I was saying right from the start, every scene tightens the net. Like as you get further along, just the intensity builds and builds. This is not Stefano's only film. He did The Black Orchid in 1959, The Naked Edge in 1961, Eye of the Cat in 1969, The Kindred in 1987, and Blackout in 1988. It's just a short list of his many, many credits. And he also had a major TV legacy to follow up on our encore from last week. He was a key creative force on the Outer Limits show in the early 60s, including what I guess is a famous episode called The Demon with a Glass Hand.
Ooh.
Which I've watched several episodes of Alfred Hitchcock Presents. It's pretty fun. And speaking of which, that he used his crew from Alfred Hitchcock Presents in the filming, which again was shot in black and white, intentionally so, to keep it lean and controlled. Psycho is often described as having more stripped-down production style compared to Hitchcock, his glossy late 50s thrillers. One widely discussed element is Hitchcock's use of personnel associated with his television production world, especially the working style and efficiently associated with Alfred Hitchcock Presents, which had been running at that time since 1955. And so working with this crew helped him achieve faster setups and keep his tighter scheduling discipline and a no-frills production rhythm without sacrificing control or precision. Reports vary, though, on exactly how this was. I think the best way to put it is that Hitchcock leaned into TV-style efficiency rather than claiming a single exact crew roster. So it's not like he took the Alfred Hitchcock Presents crew and brought them in, but there was a lot of overlap, and that really helped him stay to a tight schedule and maintaining that lower budget goal that he had.
I thought he brought the crew in. I thought that was what I was confused. So he brought some of the crew in?
I think that there's sort of mixed reports on exactly
how that worked. But either way, brought his television sensibilities to this film.
And I do think it included a lot of the crew.
Right.
But there's no exact crew roster from like the show.
Cool.
And it was a TV show, so I'm sure that changed a bit over time too. But it was primarily filmed in Universal Studios backlot in Universal City in Hollywood.
That was one of my questions, was whether any of that was location or if it was all sets.
It's a set, and it's a famous set. And they were built and placed there as iconic set pieces. It was filmed in late 1959 into early 1960, and the film's dread comes from how ordinary the environment is. a roadside motel, a house, a hallway, shot with the seriousness of a crime scene. And to kind of circle back to what you were asking, the Bates house and motel aren't just settings, they're an entire horror ecosystem. The geography itself is like predatory. I was saying that last night as we were watching it. It's almost like, I mean, just the fact that the house sort of overlooks it is a little unnerving just from the start. But to me, it almost seemed like as the film moved on, you were looking more up at the house, like filmed at and maybe I was just imagining it, but it seemed like the house itself became more menacing.
Oh, yeah. And that's on purpose. I just had a conversation with somebody about one of my favorite movies of all time, Peter Jackson's Dead Alive, and the house. And it's fun. And I wish that I had that conversation after rewatching this movie, because one of the things in that movie, which is also about a mother and a son, and very different feeling kind of for a movie, but the all-engulfing mother, like I think there was a lot more influence of Psycho on that movie. The house is up high and you're looking up high and it's kind of looking down on, same kind of deal. So really interesting. The home, and that digs into some of our themes, which we've already obviously touched on a little bit, but like the ordinary, the danger lurking in the ordinary, right? The ordinary becoming menacing. Also, that house, super dope with all those statues. Man, that house is cool.
I've never been to Universal Studios in Hollywood, but the house is still there in the motel. So it's part of the tour as far as I couldn't find anywhere where it said that it's been torn down. It does sound like it's been altered and moved over time, but it doesn't seem like it's been permanently torn down. And so if you go on like the backlot tour at Universal Studios, you can go to you drive by the Bates Motel and the Bates household. And that was featured in Maxine, if you remember. That was part of it.
That's right.
Because she was filming on that lot, and part of that, she ends up running up to the house.
I was remembering that. That's right. I couldn't remember which movie I was remembering it from, but I knew I was remembering it from a movie. That's crazy.
Well, why don't you tell me now about the characters?
I'd love to. I'll start with kind of the cast, and we can talk about the characters and the cast as we go. Interesting billing order. You would think that Anthony Perkins and Janet Leigh, or Norman and Marion, would be first, but Marion's actually fourth billing. She's after, even though, but we'll get into that. So first of all, Norman Bates, played by Anthony Perkins. Could talk about him for just hours. Anthony Perkins, his father, his name was Osgood Perkins, which is also the name of his son. He was a successful Broadway performer and did some movies, and died when Anthony was just 5 years old. So losing his father at an early age. He does have children, Elvis and Osgood. Obviously, Osgood Perkins has put out a lot of movies recently that are all various levels of good. We really enjoyed.
Different levels of Osgood.
I see what you did. It's
I'll
okay.
see myself out.
Nah, you can't. Who else would make me laugh with their puns? But The Monkey and Longlegs, right, are two that we've watched that we really liked. Also, plenty of stuff about Anthony Perkins, but he went to college with Mr. Rogers. They were not in the same class, but they both were in the same college in Florida. He died of AIDS in the 90s, and which is a big piece of lots of information about that, and about, this was before I think people really understood it, but he wrote a really beautiful letter to his sons that was given to them after his death, in which he said, "Boys, don't try to find a woman as wonderful as your mother to marry, because if you do, you'll stay single your whole lives," which I thought was very sweet. He did plenty of movies, including all of the three Psycho sequels, Psycho 2, 3, and 4. And then another one that looked really interesting that I really want to see is Edge of Sanity in 1989, where he plays Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But I think Dr. Jekyll does a bunch of cocaine and becomes Mr. Hyde. So very 80s. It sounds like something up our alley. And he also has said, Anthony Perkins has said, "I have a lot of affection for Norman Bates and a lot of sympathy. So does the audience, I think. He's not just a monster, he's tortured. The real secret of the Psycho movies is that they're tragedies first and horror movies second," which I thought would be a good lead-in to the character of Norman Bates, who is so charming and so awkward at the same time. I'm thinking of the scene where he wants to invite Marion into the office and he kind of steps towards her and then steps back and then invites her in to have some sandwiches. He's so hesitant, so awkward, just very compelling to watch. Like just captures you while he's on screen.
I can't think of a performance in a horror or horror adjacent movie that I like better. Maybe there are some that are equal if I really get thinking about it, but I can't think of any that top Anthony Perkins' performance as Norman Bates in this movie.
It's so amazing to watch. And we did watch this, I think, a year or two ago. And I remember being struck by his performance then. And again, this was not the first time we'd seen it, but I think this is one of the things that I missed when I was younger, maybe not having seen as many movies, was just the efficacy of his performance, like how good he is. I mean, plenty of incredible lines here, right? Because, and we are talking about Norman and not Mother, because they are two different characters, although they are in the same body, right? But some of his lines that are just so delicious. I hate the look of beasts when they're stuffed, which is funny to me. A boy's best friend is his mother. When talking about putting his mother into an institution, when Marion suggests that perhaps he should do that, he says, if you love someone, you don't do that to them, even if you hate them, which is just such a rich sentence and kind of just a really, wow, like loving someone but hating them at the same time, reflecting this enmeshed relationship that he had with his mother that extended even beyond death. Norman is charming, handsome, kind of glib, a little weird, a little off. He is really good at cleaning up. It is a lot easier to clean up after murders when they don't have all those sprays and blacklights and things.
And DNA testing. Yeah.
You could just clean it up and it would be gone and nobody would know. One thing I was wondering is sometimes it's hard to tell if Norman is weird or if it's just the late 50s, early 60s, right? Like, I think there's a cultural piece that we've talked about when watching non-English films that you're like, oh, are they weird because they're weird, or are they weird because this culture is different to me and I can't tell? And I had a few moments like that with Norman, which makes me want to watch more movies from that era, right? That time period, just kind of get more of feel. So that was just one question I had. I mean, Norman Bates is just, could watch him all day long. So should I do this in billing order or should we go to Marion next?
Let's do Marion.
Let's do Marion next. So Janet Leigh, the big star, as you mentioned earlier. Janet Leigh, there were great Hollywood discovery stories back then that don't really happen now. But she was discovered by a retired MGM actress who saw a picture of her on her father's desk at a ski resort and got her a screen test and a starring role in her first movie, The Romance of Rosie Ridge, in 1947. She was in more than 50 movies, including The Manchurian Candidate, 1962, with Frank Sinatra. She was in The Fog with Jamie Lee Curtis, her daughter, in 1980, and also in Halloween H2O with her daughter, Jamie Lee Curtis. One of two children I think she had with Tony Curtis, who was big star as well.
And also in H2O, they have her car from Psycho.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
And
that's so cool.
The little scene that between her and Laurie Strode, before she gets in the car, they have some of Herman's music from Psycho underlying that scene.
That's right. Yeah, no, she's prolific actress, really beloved, and she was the big name for this movie. She, of course, steals $40,000. It's a crime of opportunity. It wasn't planned. It was a crime of her feeling frustration at not being able to afford to marry the man that she loves. The internet did a quick calculation for me. $40,000 in 1960 would be about $435,000 to $450,000 today. So that is a lot of money. One small thing I noticed, the money doesn't fit in her purse. Like they could have picked a purse that the money fit in, right? That was a choice that was made, that this money, there's so much of it physically, it doesn't fit in her purse, and she's like hiding it from the cop when she gets pulled over. One thing I noticed the most about Marion during this particular watch through is how she's really not very good at getting people to ingratiate. She's not good at ingratiating herself to people. Like, she's kind of off-putting and not very nice. Like, she could have easily got that cop to leave her away if she just chilled the fuck out. But like she didn't, right? Like she was just combative and pushy. And she's kind of the same way with the sales guy and even really forward with Norman. Like she's a complex character who's got all sorts of motivations. And we get a glimpse into that when she's imagining the conversations people are having as she's driving on the highway before she arrives at the motel, imagining her boss saying, you know a girl for 10 years, you think you can trust her. Like those, she's really complex as a character, and it is just a delight to watch her on screen.
Well, and I have two theories as to why she was not good at interacting with the people she encountered the day after she stole the money.
Yeah.
First one being that maybe it was so out of character for her, and it was such a flash decision that the next day, all of a sudden, she's realized what she's done. She's trying to figure out how she can get away with it, but it's so out of character for her that it makes like existing in the world very difficult.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The other thing is that she fell asleep in that car and slept all night and was woken up from her sleep by this police officer. And listen, I've had many days where I'm woken up in a way that is not by my choosing. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that can really throw you off.
That's true.
So
Again, that's fair. Although, I don't know, Marion does do one of the scariest things I've ever seen when she steps in the shower and then turns it on. Yeah. Did you notice that?
You see that in movies a lot, and I don't know if that was a thing.
Do people please, I gotta know, are people doing this? Just getting in the shower and turning it on before warming it up or anything? Like you just get in and that was awful. I have not ever done that in my life by choice. I think maybe if I've had to in the past, it has been involuntary.
Well, I don't think warm showers really existed until like the 1920s. I'm less knowledgeable about that than movies from the 1960s.
Even in cold showers, and I've been to countries where they didn't have warm showers, where they had colder showers in a few different countries. And even then, I would still turn the water on and then step into it, as opposed to stand there and then turn it on and it just hits you all at once. Like that seems barbaric to me.
But maybe that was because you're so used to waiting for it to warm up.
Maybe
people from those countries
just stand under the. Would someone tell me?
Because you wouldn't want to waste any water. Maybe
that's true too. You don't want to waste any water. Someone tell me. I also have been places where I've taken bucket baths for a month or two because there was no running water, and that was okay too. That was actually almost. I guess that would be a similar feeling where you pour the bucket of water over yourself.
Like the ice bucket challenge,
which I have never done, but
I did it. That was pre you.
I also did cold showers for a while because sometimes I go through stages where I try things like that, and that was, but that was usually at the end of my shower, so it wasn't just a walk into the cold water. I don't know. Maybe I'm doing it wrong.
Now we can't even get you to take a bucket bath.
So that is Marion Crane, and I'll talk more about the relationship between them when I talk about themes. We've got Lila Crane, played by Vera Miles, who shows up in the second half of the movie after Marion's been killed. Vera Miles was a beauty queen from Kansas. She was kind of taken up by Hitchcock, put under personal contract. He called her his new Grace Kelly. And then she got pregnant and ended up having to drop out of a few. So she never quite made it. But she is in, I think, 3 films that have been named by the National Film Institute. She was in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance in 1962 with John Wayne and James Stewart. And then, of course,
Jimmy
Psycho.
Stewart?
Yes, he's James Stewart in IMDb.
I know.
Thanks. And then also The Searchers by John Ford in 1956. So she was in Psycho 2, which I haven't seen, but I thought that Vera as Marion's sister, see, here's where I think your theory about Marion just kind of like going through some shit and that's why she was being that way. Vera was similarly shiny-spined, steel-spined, right? Like had no problem sticking up for herself, standing up to people, asking for what she wanted. She was not just sitting around waiting. She forced herself. She said, no, I'm going to go. And I think my impression of women in that time period was that they were generally subservient and maybe less assertive. And the Crane sisters do not fit that stereotype at all. And so I thought that they I mean, they looked kind of alike, but that may just be because their hairstyles and clothing styles were similar. And it's hard for me to kind of to separate out like how much alike they look physically. But their behavior, I believed that they were sisters and that they had like a dad who was a lawyer or something growing up. Like they had somebody who taught them how to argue. So I thought she was a great pairing with Marian's personality. And I'll lead into the next character with this. Lila is very bad at being not suspicious, especially as she and Sam are walking around the motel, which will bring us to Sam Loomis unless you have something more about Lila.
She was in 3 episodes of Murder, She Wrote.
Oh, she did a bunch of TV and movies.
Which I watched a lot with my mother when I was a child.
Yes, that explains things.
Did I tell you about my mom's thing with the opening of Murder, She Wrote?
So no. Oh, my goodness.
So, as I've mentioned, I'm from Maine originally. Mm-hmm. And Murder, She Wrote, starring Angela Lansbury as Jessica Fletcher, takes place in Cabot Cove, Maine, a fictional Maine town. And in the opening, there's, sort of the opening montage during the theme song. Jessica Fletcher is on the beach, and in the shot, the beach is on the right and the water's on the left. And my mom said that's how you know it was actually shot in California. Not that the camera could just be on either side. I don't know if she was being serious or not.
How old were you when this happened?
Somewhere 10 to 12. Even then, I was like...
I was going to ask, did you question this or did you learn this? Did you realize at a later age that perhaps your mom was mistaken?
I think I realized it, but maybe didn't say anything.
I mean, yeah, you wouldn't say anything. That's great. I have not heard that story about your mom before.
Sorry, Sam Loomis.
Sam Loomis.
Our second Sam Loomis.
Our second Sam Loomis.
Who's really our first Sam Loomis.
Our second attempt at talking about him, played by John Gavin, whose actual birth name was Juan Vincent Apablasa. He was a 5th-generation Los Angelino who spoke fluent Spanish. He graduated with honors from Stanford, majoring in Latin American economic history, and eventually was the U.S. ambassador to Mexico in the 80s. Yeah, well, so he was highly educated. He's 6'4", offered a screen test and a contract with Universal. He was kind of positioned as the next Rock Hudson. And so he played Julius Caesar in Spartacus, Stanley Kubrick's Spartacus. So he was in 2 really big movies in 1960.
So he is the perfect man.
Yes, he is. Yes, exactly. He is and his wife is lovely. He married an actress and she is still working up to this day, I think, although she's like in her 90s at this point. But yeah, pretty cool guy. He said about the 2 films, Psycho and Spartacus, I didn't have an inkling they would be classics. Had I realized that, perhaps I would have paid more attention, which is great. He was almost James Bond. He was signed to replace George Lazenby in Diamonds Are Forever in 1971, but then they convinced Sean Connery to reprise the role, so he lost out on that. But again, which goes with his whole vibe as like the perfect man, he says he wasn't disappointed about not getting Bond because it would have prevented him from fulfilling his childhood dream to be the U.S. ambassador to Mexico. So he was appointed by Ronald Reagan from May 7th, 1981 to June 10th, 1986. The only other thing about the actor, Hitchcock was unhappy with his performance. He thought his acting style was wooden, and in interviews he called him the stiff. But I feel like John Gavin probably just chuckled and said, oh, well, that's the vibe I get from his life story. He just very, and he gives that impression on camera, right, on screen, that he is kind of that good guy. He's a great foil for Marion. He's kind of easygoing, but he seriously loves her, sincerely loves her. He just wants to be able to give her more than the back room of a shop. His letter to Marion, nobody writes like that anymore, right? He's a good guy, although I can see why Hitchcock might call him the stiff. I guess it's a good foil for the 2 Crane sisters to play off of, for sure, but also very bad at being not suspicious. very bad at it. At one point when he's trying to distract Norman and he's like right up in his face, you're like, why are you so close to him? He's going to know what's wrong. But he clearly cared about Marion a great deal. And he does a fine job in this. He kind of helps the plot along.
Yeah, no, I think he's great. He serves the character's purpose. And his character was the name inspiration for Dr. Loomis.
And Billy Loomis. So we've got that going on. Just two other characters. Obviously, there's more people in here. Oh, three other characters. There's Detective Arbogast, played by Martin Balsam.
He's great.
Great, fantastic.
Arbogast.
And we've got Sheriff Al Chambers, played by John McIntyre. I just wanted to bring up the trope of the town sheriff who kind of knows everybody. And it was reminding me of Stranger Things, which we also talked about last week, right? Like the sheriff who, obviously the sheriff in Stranger Things is a little less put together than...
Hopper's rough around the edges.
Hopper's a little rough around the edges, whereas Sheriff Chambers has got it together, you know?
And I thought it was funny how... Because it's like the middle of the night when Sam and Lila come to their house, but they take them and hear their story or whatever. And who does he call? He calls over to Norman.
He calls Norman.
But didn't he had his wife, because you had to like connect the call through the operator.
Yes.
His wife did the connection part and then handed him the phone.
Right. The sheriff would like you to connect to the Bates Motel.
Yeah. I'm going to start having you do that.
No problem.
You want me to order tacos later? Be like, my husband would like to order some tacos.
And then hand you the phone.
Yes.
Perfect. There was one line he had I really liked. What didn't make my favorite line, but Lila is trying to explain to them that Lila, very persistent, feeling like something's not right. And she goes, I still feel, and he says, I can see you do. Sorry, I couldn't make you feel better.
Yeah.
And it's not even, it's not dismissive. It's acknowledging her feelings. It's not saying her feelings are wrong. It's not calling her hysterical. But he's also sincerely saying, I'm sorry, I couldn't make you feel better. I might use that line with the children or upset people in the world, right? Like, I'm so angry. Like, I can see that you are. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to make you feel better. Like, what a great line. And then the only other person or character of note was Caroline, the woman in the office, who's played by Pat Hitchcock, Hitchcock's daughter.
And we confirm that it was?
Yes, it is his daughter. I did confirm that. So.
Yeah, she was a great little character.
Great little comic relief. And also knowing, we probably don't have time for this, but Hitchcock had a lot to say about psychoanalysis and about psychiatrists and all that. And so she talks about being given tranquilizers prescribed for headaches. And I think that's just me. I thought that was funny as I kind of saw a few things about how Hitchcock felt about modern psychology and psychiatry. So yeah, that's all I've got for characters and the people who played them. Is it time for a little murder and mayhem?
Murder, mayhem.
Mayhem.
Well, obviously, this is a little different than a lot of the movies we've watched in the sense that it has a very low body count. But the kills are pretty phenomenal. And as we've mentioned, historical from the genre sense, from filmmaking sense. Of course, the first key death that we witness in the story, it all builds up to Marion Crane's murder in the shower, one of the most famous murders in horror movie history. And there's a lot out there about this scene, like we mentioned at the beginning of the episode, which we're not going to get into all of the details. And this scene was shot on a soundstage at the Universal lot. And it was, I found when it was filmed. It was filmed between December 17th and December 23rd of 1959. And Hitchcock, I've called him Hitchclock and Hitchcock. Why is it such a hard name?
I don't know.
He had around, the numbers are mixed. There's no exact number, but some say he had anywhere from 70 to 78 camera setups for the shower scene for the murder, and anywhere from, well, and around 52 cuts. So 78 setups, 52 cuts for 45 seconds of footage. I mean, even the music video directors in the early MTV generation could never have imagined that many cuts in one scene. They also created a special shower head for that scene. There's that famous shot, which if you watch any horror movie that has a shower scene in it, a lot of times there will be a tribute shot to Psycho where it's pointed from a downward angle up to the shower head. And they created a special shower head to avoid water being sprayed on the camera while it was filming sort of up in between the water. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Yeah, I had that in my special effects part later, so it does make sense.
Sorry.
You stole it. I don't care. I just won't say it again.
And so I'll save a little bit more of that if you have more special effects from that scene.
I have a couple things, but I don't think it matters where we get it in here. I think it's a good part of Murder Mayhem, especially given it's the most famous horror death scene, I think, arguably, in the history of horror.
And I guess as I was doing some research, there's sort of a perception, sort of a Mandela effect. Some people remember that she was actually, they showed stabbing, like the knife penetrating skin, and that absolutely doesn't happen. I don't remember that ever happening. But the quick cut montage throughout that scene, plus the sound, both the sound design and the sort of the shriek, shriek, shriek music, and the angle choice, it creates the audience's mind creates the stabbing and the gore from that scene.
Yeah, 100%.
And did you want to say now what the blood was? I think most people know.
No, you can go ahead.
Chocolate syrup, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really does look great in the black and white. The second death and the last really on-screen death that we see in this movie is of Detective Private Investigator Arbogast. I like saying it like the sheriff did. Arbogast. And he is, he'd already been to the Bates Motel once, talked to Norman, who, kind of wavered on his story and got more suspicious over the course of it. But originally, Arbogast leaves satisfied to some degree of the story, and he thinks, he's satisfied that Marion's been there, but she left. And as he's reporting this back to Sam and Lila over the phone, just over the course of that phone conversation, you can sort of see the wheels spinning, and he's becoming more suspicious. And he's like, I think I want to talk to the mother. And he goes back to the Bates Motel, can't find Norman anywhere, goes up to the house and lets himself in. And he's slowly going up the stairs. And then at the top of the stairs, we get that awesome bird's eye view that shows Arbogast reaching the top of the stairs and the mother rushing out of the bedroom, stabs him in the face. You can see the stab wounds on his face, which I feel like is pretty gory for American cinema at that time.
Yeah, definitely.
And that really interesting shot of him falling back down the stairs, which at first when I first saw it, I think seemed a little wonky in a way, but I
know what you mean.
But I think how they sell it is really great, is that at the very end, before he hits the floor at the bottom of the stairs, you can see his feet like holding on to the backs of the steps as he's going down.
Yeah.
And then you can imagine he's somehow, it would be very hard to pull it off, but he's been sort of holding on to his balance down the steps as he's falling backwards. Such a cool shot. And
you made us watch it twice.
Well, I did. It wasn't because of that. It's because I was looking for that shot. Remember, actually, later in the movie, there's a shot that kind of goes up the stairs, goes past that bedroom door, and ends in that bird's eye view shot that we see.
Yes.
And I thought that shot happened before his death, but it happens later.
I see. Okay.
That's why I wanted to rewatch it. But the Arbogast falling down the stairs is widely described as a rear projection shot. A background plate of the staircase descent was filmed. And then the actor, Martin Balsam, was placed in a chair in front of a rear projection screen and performed the flailing motion to create the illusion of tumbling backward. And the rear projection is often how they, especially in older movies, how they filmed driving scenes and stuff like that. Also famously in Eyes Wide Shut, when Tom Cruise is, quote unquote, walking down the streets of New York, some of those are rear projection shots. But it's discussed as a safety-conscious, controlled way to achieve a surreal and dizzying effect. And then the last death worth talking about is the death of Norman's mother, Mrs. Bates, because we do get a grisly reveal near the end of the film where Lila, in her own investigative
there it is.
actions, while Sam is distracting Norman down at the motel, Lila's searching the house for the mother because she thinks she might be able to get more information about her sister.
Yep.
She eventually, after searching the rest of the house, makes her way into the basement where she sees Norman's mother sitting back to, kind of reminded me of what they did in Blair Witch Project at the end of that. But this is not a Blair Witch. I don't want to do any spoilers. But Norman's mother's sitting there. You can see it's like an old lady sitting in a chair. When she turns the chair, that's when we see that the sheriff's reports that Norman's mother had been dead for 10 years were true. And we see that the skeleton of Mrs. Bates revealed.
The corpse. They use the word corpse a lot,
Yes.
especially at the end.
The corpse.
Yes. So we have that confirmed. Yeah, definitely a huge reveal at that time. There are Norman has killed 2 other girls, or they suspect that, right? But we don't see, that's not on screen or anything like that.
And not part of the story.
Not part of the story, but it's part of his backstory that we kind of learn in that little epilogue bit.
And also that he killed his mother's partner.
That he killed his mother and her partner. Yep. And
even though it's not a high kill count, obviously for the time, the violence is very shocking and abrupt. There's a lot of buildup prior to all of these deaths / reveals.
I mean, I think that's kind of what we've talked about with a lot of our elevated horror movies, right? Where there's a low build and then a sudden graphic horror. And while for us modern moviegoers, the scene of Marion being killed in the shower might not seem that gross or disturbing, I think the original impact, if you were watching this in 1960, would be similar to a scene in Bring Her Back, for example. There's a couple that I can think of that are just unbearable. But after a long, slow build-up, I think same deal.
But that's basically it for Murder Mayhem in this one.
Great. I'll move on into themes then.
Yeah, hit me with your themes.
There's so many. This is, again, so ridiculous. I just am going to try to keep it kind of short. Really had fun with my new textbook and got some new books added from the bibliography from that because obviously there's been a lot written about that. The first one being guilt and shame. Hitchcock was raised Catholic and he was practicing Catholic throughout his life. There's no surprise. There's a lot of guilt and shame in this film. Looked at it from that perspective. So Marion is someone who appears to be kind and good and then who is engaged in a really immoral act and then experiences a lot of guilt and shame around that. And Norman also, same deal, seems very mild-mannered and pleasant and appears to be decent, but in fact is engaged in these deeply immoral acts. And that is a very Catholic vision of what humans are, that we're all fallen. Even the best of us are fallen. The conversations in Marion's head while she's driving to the motel exemplify some of the shame that she's feeling. And one thing I thought was interesting to think about, teenagers in slashers, which are kind of the grandchildren of this film maybe, but teenagers in slashers, they don't feel bad about what they've done. And the killer is often punishing them not just for the acts that they have committed, but also for their ignorance of how those acts are wrong maybe, right? Like they don't have any, they're not punished. They're punished just as much for not realizing that they've erred, but as they are for what they've done. But both Marion and Norman experience guilt and shame over what they've done. The mother persona murders Marion as a punishment for her guilt. So even though she's planning to go back and bring the money back the next day, she still is being punished for that, and also for being like an object of Norman's sexual desire. That's also part of it. And so in that way, she's punishing Norman by taking away the object of his desire. But yeah, so guilt and shame, very apparent in all of this. And it's a way that Marion and Norman mirror one another in that they're both very similar. And this is done on purpose, of course. Another obviously very common theme in a lot of our slasher movies is repressed sexuality. And as we've discussed, as we've seen our Marion in her underwear, Marion as a sexual being, Marion as a woman having sex out of marriage, sexuality, sexual attraction, and sexual perversion. So Norman being a cross-dresser, and at one point they say, oh, he's a transvestite. They're like, no, he's not a transvestite. He's got multiple personalities. There's a difference in motivation, right? He doesn't dress in women's clothes to get sexual satisfaction. He does it because his personality has split. Marion is coded as sexual in a lot of different ways. There is her underwear that changes from white to black. She opens up, she's in white brown underwear, and later on she's in black, which visually is really striking, but also kind of represents her moving from more innocent, good person to this person who's committed this act. So Marion represents Norman's repressed sexuality and also her own struggle with her sexuality, saying, no, I don't want to be meeting in cheap motels. I want us to get married and go out to dinner like a married couple. That all is in here as well. I don't know if you have anything on those two.
Oh, one thing I was going to jump in and say, and I had to get up and cover our dog. He was getting cold. And he kept digging at the blanket, trying to find a way to get under it. So I saved him. The one thing I wanted to mention that is something that I often forget is that they do make the point of showing that she regretted her actions and was going to try to make things right, which is obviously an important character point.
Yes, Marion wanted to make things right. Norman, however, does not. Obviously, the mother-son relationship, the Oedipus complex, is a huge factor. I actually didn't take a ton of notes on this because I think it's one of the first things that you think of when you think of this movie. We talked about this a little. Family is not a haven, but is a source of the horror. The engulfing mother, the mother who completely takes over the son so that the son can never be on his own. Norman, yes, he did murder his mother and his mother's lover, but also his mother kind of parentified him and turned him into her husband when she lost her husband. And so the damage that does when we pervert the natural order of things, where mother cares for child, not child becomes the mother's support, and how horrible that can be. In the end, the psychiatrist or the analyst, whatever they call him, he says that Norman only half existed to begin with, which I think is a really poignant and pointed way of saying, of pointing this out, right? That because Norman's mother never allowed him to completely become an individual when she was alive, that when she died, she still continued to dominate him in a way that caused all of these tragedies. Which also leads into a theme of madness and identity. The split personality, the title sequence, did you notice, splits horizontally?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I didn't notice it. I read about it. So
I can imagine it, though.
Yes,
I love that title sequence.
Exactly. So the movie itself has a split personality. I think the theme of madness and of split identity, I mean, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde addresses split identity. We've got a lot of these tropes in our horror fiction, whether that be books or movies. We see this a lot. I do think it's an interesting way to understand. I have known several people in my own life who have been diagnosed with what they now call dissociative identity disorder, which used to be multiple personality disorder. But there's also been a lot of movies about this for decades, right? We watched, what was it, De Palma's Sisters with Margot Kidder explores this idea. There is so many other ones that I can't think of right now off the top of my head, and I should have written down.
I'm not sure if it's true or not, but you can tell me. I feel like that portrayal in movies is a good dramatic way, a good theatrical way,
yes,
to present the complexity of the human psyche in general.
Yes.
Because no person is like all good for the most part or all bad. Like our minds are complex and our personalities are complex.
Yeah, and I will say that I think that the popular understanding of split personality that comes from movies like Psycho and other movies is certainly not accurate, at least to my experience in real life with people who have this disorder, which is caused by trauma and is caused by splitting, but movies are not known for being incredibly accurate, right? And I think that it is a really tempting piece of drama for a writer to use if you've got one person, two people in one body. Most notably, most of the people that I've known do not just have two people. They have multiple aspects to their personality. So I think this is definitely not an accurate portrayal of that state of being, but I think it is really a fascinating way to explore the concept of our own split nature.
And I do suppose in the real world, if somebody who already had some sort of homicidal tendencies, because obviously there are people who kill people.
Yes.
And if somebody sort of had whatever that is in them and suffered trauma at a young age and their personality split, I suppose it could happen.
Oh, I think it totally could. I 100% think it could. I think it would. Yeah, I think dramatization it can capture the whole thing, obviously, but I think in this case it is just it's a really interesting thing to see here, and must have been the first time most people had heard of it watching this movie, right? Like most people did not have an understanding of that at all. And also in terms of madness and identity, yeah, we've got Norman and his mom, but also Norman and Marion are kind of uncanny doubles. Their names are very similar. That was changed from the book. They have almost the same exact letters in their names. In the scenes where they're together, there's often mirrors in the background. So there's a lot in there about mirrors. Their stories are complementary and cyclical. And then there's one thing that I thought was really interesting. You know, when Marion is in the car and she's listening to these things and she's remembering the millionaire and she kind of like has this little half smile and looks directly into the camera. This echoes exactly Norman's face at the end of the movie where he's got that little half smile and looks straight at the camera. And if you put those two shots side by side, it is very clear that they are mirrors of each other. And so that's why I believe that Hitchcock choosing to kill off Marion halfway through the movie is not just a gotcha on the audience of like, oh, you thought you were coming to see this movie starring Janet Leigh. Like, no, this is a crucial part of the story in that Marion, we switch from it being about her to being about Norman, but they reflect one another in a lot of different ways. So I think that piece I found really, really interesting.
No, absolutely. And not on topic exactly with themes, but I just was remembering when you mentioned the mirrors, the moment she's like in the motel room and trying to find a place to hide her money and catches a glimpse of herself. It's like the dresser mirror is kind of in line with the bathroom mirror. And she catches like a glimpse of herself like in the double reflection and kind of gets a jump scare, old school jump scare.
Yes.
I thought that was really effective and interesting, and also showed kind of where her character was at mentally. Like she was, to get scared like that, you're usually in some form of fight or flight.
Exactly. And the same thing happens to her sister later when she's exploring Mother's room.
Oh,
the sister has a similar moment with two mirrors.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
You might be, but there are multiple mirrors in the hotel room where Marion.
Now I don't know for sure if it happened to Marion, because you're right, it does happen to Lila in the bedroom. So,
well, who knows?
Who knows?
Told you, we're not perfect.
For next watch,
we'll double check.
Either way, it was a cool sequence, whatever one I'm thinking of.
It was
that I can't remember.
Last theme. Birds, which you love, Johnny. First of all, her name's Marion Crane. Come on. Beyond that, there are lots of birds in Norman's office. There's birds of prey. There's like crow and an owl, and then there's also docile birds like a turkey. And so again, this is one article I read. You could go for hours on this, but the war between Norman the son and Norman the mother, between like the large yet timid birds like the turkey, and then there's the birds of prey like the owl, and then Marion has songbirds behind her. And he even points out, you eat like a bird. So there's this whole predator-prey thing going on with birds. And then when Norman's talking about his mother, there's a low-angle shot of a stuffed owl above his head. So the predator, whenever they're talking about his mother, the predator birds are in view. And then when he's talking, he's got like his hand on the turkey, right? Like the calm, docile bird. Norman knocks a picture of a bird off the wall when he finds Marion's body. Finds in air quotes because, of course, he left it there. But, knocking the bird off the wall, Marion has been killed. And then there's one shot that's really interesting. The shot of Norman's neck when he's looking at the guest book with Arbogast.
Yeah.
That extreme low-angle close-up on his chin and neck. And I had to dig in. I was like, what is the point of that shot? And it captures him chewing candy corn, by the way, best candy ever, fight me, which accentuates his jawline and makes him appear bird-like. And it kind of highlights his jerky, bird-like, predatory movements and behavior, right? Like he himself is kind of bird-like.
Even the candy corn is like seed.
It is. The candy corn is like seed, and then he like shakes his head when Arbogast is like, oh, why don't you just let me blah, blah, blah. And he's like, nope, nope, and shakes his head rapidly from side to side. I hadn't been able to name that when I was watching it, but looking back at it, Norman kind of as this giant predatory bird just is such a cool thing. So that is just a taste of some of the themes that people have talked about and teased out of this movie.
Excellent.
Yeah. Who's your favorite character?
Probably Norman.
I think it's got to be Norman.
I just love that performance.
It's so good. It's just so, yeah, it's got to be Norman. Do you have a favorite quote this week?
I wrote some down in my notebook that's not near me, like usual.
Always.
I think last episode I had it with me, but.
Well, that was last episode. I do have my favorite. It comes early on, and Marion says to Caroline, headaches are like resolutions. You forget them as soon as they stop hurting. Which, I get headaches. I thought it was cool.
Do you have a couple more?
There's one, Sam at the beginning. Whenever it's possible, I want to see you, and under any circumstances, even respectability. Sam says to Marion, which I thought was sweet. And then a ton from Norman. I mean, we all go a little mad sometimes. It's almost too good.
There was a line that I liked, and maybe you wrote this down. I thought it was a sweet line in the opening scene with Marion and Sam. They're talking about sort of the pros and cons of them having a real relationship. And he's really worried about not being able to provide a life that he feels like she deserves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because he's basically living in the back room of his hardware store and he's paying alimony to his ex-wife, which also is kind of a big deal, right? 1960 divorce.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
But he's saying something about, he's kind of being sarcastic and like, oh yeah, and you can lick the stamps for my alimony payments.
Oh yeah.
And she said like, I'll lick your stamps or something.
I'll lick the stamps. That was really beautiful too. Yeah. So yeah, that's our story. There's a lot to it.
And I'm wondering if in future episodes we should put Murder Mayhem in Vibe Check. Maybe we'll leave it where it is. But Vibe Check has now become the shortest section, I feel like. We'll see.
It is. Yeah, it is. But let's see how it goes.
We're still developing. Episode 30. Always thinking how we can make this experience even better. But for now, let's dip our little toesies into Vibe Check. I was going to try to do like Crisscross. Remember Crisscross from the 90s?
Oh, I remember Crisscross from the 90s.
We get a whack like that, but I was going to try to do it with vibe. I'll practice it.
Vibbity check.
Sure.
You would have been better if you pulled it off.
No, you did better. Now I'm mad. That's it.
I like to think of our faithful listeners of whom I'm not sure how many there are, but of them waiting the same way I do every week to hear how you're going to do vibe check.
And I've got some other ideas for down the line related to that. But anyway.
Oh.
Cinematography.
Let's hear it.
One of the important factors contributing to the vibe of any film.
Too true.
And we've talked a lot about the black and white and everything in this. The cinematographer, the director of photography is John L. Russell. And he was Oscar nominated for his work as the cinematographer for Psycho. He's an American cinematographer. Some of the hallmarks pertaining to the cinematography of Psycho is the high contrast, black and white imagery. There was one shot I really liked. I think it was after Arbogast is killed, and we don't actually see Norman sinking the car after Arbogast is killed like we did with Marion's death.
Yeah.
But we do see a shot of him sort of standing out there like it's just been done, right?
Yes.
And I think I mentioned to you while we were watching it that there's a shot there where there's almost light entirely around him. It's outside, and the shadow is like directly over his face. You can still see his face, but his face is completely in shadow. And I think I said you wouldn't see that in like a color movie. It would be a really awkward looking shot, but it is so cool in the black and white, and is obviously really, doubling down on the fact that Norman is behaving very badly.
There is a shot, and I think it might be leading into that shot or right before it, where Lila is in the hardware store and she's right in front of a bunch of rakes. And so there's like these rakes behind her, and then it crossfades into Norman standing by the swamp, kind of looking out. And I think that's what came to mind when you were talking about those high contrast. It was right around that time, like the moving back and forth between Norman in the swamp and them at the hardware store. Really, really beautiful.
The framing of the shots sort of turns ordinary spaces into traps. The way the shots are framed and the blocking of the actors. Janet Leigh talks a little bit about what Hitchcock told her he expected from her. Because there is a lot of rumors that Hitchcock maybe wasn't the easiest to work with as an actor. I've heard people say that Hitchcock didn't like actors. And I don't know. So many rumors get built up and twisted around over time. I try to take as much of that with a grain of salt as possible. And Janet Leigh really spoke to that. She said maybe other actors saw his direction style as inhibitive of their artistry as an actor, but she didn't feel that way. She felt like it was a challenge that helped her portray her character in this movie, because if I'm remembering correctly, I don't have this in my notes, but she was saying in the interview, he basically said, you need to follow my camera. Like when my camera moves, it's basically, he was saying there's a purpose to my camera movement, and you need to be where you're supposed to be within the frame. And so if I'm moving it, you need to move, that kind of thing. But she thought it was great working with him. She really had a lot of positive things to say. But back to the cinematography specifically, there's a lot of voyeuristic angles and boxed in compositions. I think a couple of times you said as we were watching it, like, why are we so close to their face?
Yeah.
But I think it really is to make it feel awkwardly intimate at times, to make you feel that unease. It's funny. There's a lot of times I'm watching either television shows or movies. I feel like it happens more in like television, specifically like 90s sitcoms, where people are having conversations like really close to each other. And I'm like, I would feel so strange if I were standing that close to somebody and having a conversation with them. And sometimes it seems unrealistic in those aspects, but I feel like Hitchcock took that idea and put it to good use in this film. Sort of the awkwardness and sort of the unease you can feel due to just closeness to another human being. Overall, there's sort of an observational, clinical, cold eye of the camera that makes everything just more uncomfortable. I tried to do a little research regarding the relationship between Hitchcock and the cinematographer, John Russell. Not like their friendship, but their working relationship. And because I wanted to know, like we've said before, the roles can differ depending, like there's no set definition of, you know, what a director's roles are in regard to the actual filming of the movie. Cinematographer, you know, cinematographer usually has certain responsibilities from film to film, but sort of the dynamic between the director and the cinematographer, I was interested to see if there was any information on that. But like I said before, Hitchcock is famous for extreme pre-planning, which involves storyboarding, designing camera placement for scenes, and controlling how suspense information is revealed. And from what I found, Russell was responsible for executing the lighting plan, the lens and exposure decisions, and camera operation strategy in coordination with Hitchcock. This was especially critical in black and white, where contrast and tonal separation matter greatly. And the Psycho look is the result of that partnership, Hitchcock's control and design plus Russell's photographic execution. And I didn't mention just a few notable films also shot by Russell included The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms from 1953, a 1952 film called Invasion USA. I'm going backwards chronologically for a change. Park Row from 1952, The Man from Planet X in 51, Moonrise in 48, and Macbeth, H.G. Wells's Macbeth in 1948 as well. Did you have any additional notes on the cinematography?
No, just the things that we've kind of come up with. Like, there's just, again, so much we could go into. Just that I don't know how you make things so beautiful. There's so many shots that I was like, that'd make a great poster. That would look good on my wall. I want a shirt with that on it. Like, so many shots.
Give me what you got on some effects, if any.
Yeah, for sure. I've got some stuff. And I kind of combined I combined special effects with music and sound design because at this time, the special effects, obviously there's no CGI. And so there were some practical tricks and some editing tricks that they used, which we also used in Final Destination. They used some really interesting editing tricks to get some of those effects. But that combined with the sound design, I think gave us what people look at as special effects. So, for example, the stabbing sounds was a melon being hacked. There was visual match cuts, so from going from the drain to her eye in the shower scene. So that implies violence without showing gore, but it leaves the sensation of violence, right? So I was like, it's kind of vibes, it's kind of cinematography, but it's also special effects. It gets the effect across. One thing I was curious about a few times was whether Mrs. Bates's voice was actually Anthony Perkins' voice. It is not. It was a mix of voices that were blended in post-production to create a distinct creepy voice, except for the final monologue, which was mostly Virginia Gregg. So that was one question I had. I was like, that'd be really cool. But
who's Virginia Gregg?
I don't know. I think she was someone working on the movie.
Norman! Don't you bring that woman up here.
I don't know if she had to do all the same things that the woman who did the voice in The Exorcist had to do.
She couldn't be so lucky.
That poor woman. The skull, so Norman's mother at the end, this was just a cool little anecdote I found. Makeup artist Bob Dawn was also the makeup artist on the set of Leave It to Beaver at the same time as he was working on Psycho. And so he brought the skull to the Leave It to Beaver set to work on aging it, where Jerry Mathers, the little kid, helped him glue strands of hair onto the skull individually. So the skull from Psycho was created in part by the kid from Leave It to Beaver.
Nice.
Which I thought was pretty cool. And then we already talked about the shower scene. Yeah, we already talked about the shower scene. I think that was kind of the that is the scene where we actually have blood, right? And again, there's so much horror created just by the impression of some of this violence that it leaves people feeling like more happened than actually happened.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was it. I think a lot of the effects from this movie come from the cinematography and the sound design, the music. One more that we didn't talk about. The Hitchcock's initial idea was to have no music during the stabbing scene and the shower scene, but they ended up using high-pitched violin to create that sound. That is now like the most famous sound.
Yeah.
That's used everywhere and referenced everywhere in modern media. If the sound, everybody knows it. So yeah. I don't have to do it again. That's all I really had for that. And then just one little piece that doesn't fit in anywhere else, but we do have that shot of Alfred Hitchcock himself in the street at the very beginning.
Oh yeah, he's famous for popping up somewhere, sort of a no dialogue. In most instances, they're non-speaking cameos.
Yeah, background. So that was fun. I clocked him this time. I don't always, but I did this time. So yeah, that's all I got for vibes, man. I think this movie is largely vibes, and I think we interwove the vibes into a lot of our earlier discussion too.
Yeah, no, exactly. And like you had mentioned too, not to rewind into cinematography, but the shot selection is phenomenal, and that ties into, Hitchcock's planning and everything. But there are a lot of just phenomenal shots and editing cuts, like the match cut you mentioned. And
there's a picture. I think there's a shot maybe of Lila in the hardware store where she's just sitting in the back of the hardware store, and you see it's just so beautiful. Like, it's just so stunning. And yeah, makes me want to watch more black and white movies.
Well, the last thing that we talk about before we do the open mic night portion of this deal and play some sweet new tunes.
So sweet.
Is the music. And again, talk about another area where everything is iconic. The score was composed by Bernard Herrmann, an American composer for film and probably other music. I missed that part. The score is built almost entirely around a string orchestra, which, is, until I was taking these notes, I mean, obviously the score in this movie stands out very dramatically. And I didn't think about the fact that it's really all strings that creates all of the beautiful and tense. But the string orchestra creates a sound that's dry, tense, and capable of turning a single gesture, like the stabbing, into a weapon. And Herrmann's writing relies heavily on sharp, repeated rhythmic figures, high register attacks, sudden dynamic contrasts, and tight harmonic clusters versus dissonance that rarely resolve. There's not a lot, even though I have a musical mind in a lot of ways, there are very few movies where I can necessarily recall the music in my head on cue if I want to. But this movie, I can definitely do that for a couple of the scenes at least. The shower cues impact is not just screeching strings. It's aggressive bowing, stabbing accents, and percussive use of the orchestra that mimics physical assault. So it's really a combination of those sorts of effects and practical music effects, I guess, if you want to call it that. And it's not just a few violinists playing a high note.
Well, and when I say, but screeching, that screeching sound you get by using the bow in a percussive way, right, like on the strings, right? So it is like...
I wasn't contradicting what you said. I was explaining it further.
Right, exactly. Like it's not just you could grab a violin and play a couple notes. It's like the whole... They're using the instruments in ways that you don't necessarily always hear in a classical tune, right? You were never in orchestra. You played in band, right? You did percussion in band?
I played...
Did you play timpani in the orchestra?
I made all-state band just my freshman year of high school.
Oh.
I won't get into that story.
Okay. It seems tender.
It wasn't entirely my fault. I mean, part of it was my fault, certainly. But it was basically an orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
The all-state band.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did a little bit of timpani, cymbals, stuff like that.
Cool.
What was your question?
No, I was just curious if you had played in an orchestra before.
Because our band did a lot of orchestra music, but there was a separate orchestra.
Right. I was a woodwind player, so I bounced between band and orchestra. And but I was not a string player. My cousins played strings, violin, viola, cello, but I played bassoon, as we've mentioned before. No, I think it's just really interesting. I think that that's not something that we think about as much as kind of singer-songwriters. Actually, I think what you do when you're producing is a lot closer to kind of the cinematic composition that we hear in something like this, just using different instruments, right?
Yeah.
You do. I think you're really good at that, even though I've never heard you listening to classical music when you're not just hanging around. but the influence is still there.
No, absolutely. And his score in this movie, it almost tells you where to look at times. It signals danger before the frame does, and certainly accelerates your pulse even in calm shots when they want to create that unease. It does a lot of work in this movie, the music. The score works in layers: anxiety, fatalism, shock, and aftermath.
Yeah, I think that's all good stuff, man.
The direction, the music, the photography all work together in tandem. And there's no like weak element. And I think that's why at the end of the day, and the acting, of course, I think at the end of the day, that's why it comes out so highly rated in my book and the book of many others.
The book of many others.
If you're looking for more score than 7 years ago by Bernard Herrmann, more scores from him. He did a little movie called Citizen Kane in 1941.
Heard of it.
He scored The Day the Earth Stood Still in 51. And obviously there's a lot of movies in between here, but he did some other Hitchcock movies. He did Vertigo and North by Northwest. He did the original Cape Fear in 62, Fahrenheit 451 in 1966. And I think his last score that came out the year of his death was Taxi Driver in 1976.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, that's pretty much what I've got for music.
I guess we should we should move into our take.
Yeah, I don't feel like I can give you quite the Herrmann experience.
Ditto.
Should we flip to see who goes first?
Let's do it.
I've got a new thing to flip this week.
Oh, shit.
It's not a pick.
Okay.
This was closer to me on my desk. This is a little cardboard container that holds drumsticks.
Oh, I see that.
Heads is going to be the side that says the brand name.
Okay.
And tails is the small print.
Okay.
And if it lands on one of the sides, we'll play our songs at the same time.
Same time.
All right.
All right, let's do it.
Call it in the air.
Okay, go ahead. Tails.
It is heads.
Your choice.
I'll go first.
Great.
And I'll meet you back here in a minute.
Sounds good. Be right back.
All right. So this week's gimmick for our song was prop song, which means the song's based on an inanimate object from the movie. And I kind of went ambiguous with this. I don't think it's impossible to guess what it is, but I'm not going to say right now. This song's called Your Lifeless Eyes, and I don't know it very well.
wish I could warn you. Things are not quite what they seem, even though it is storming. You should keep driving up that street, because I've seen this all before. You're not the first one through that door, and you're never leaving. So enjoy what you're eating, because it's your last meal, that's for sure. That thing that you're feeling, it should be chilling to your core, because it will happen again. This is where your story ends. It would be nice if I could tell you all the things that I have seen. The reality is you'll end up like me, and your lifeless eyes will look like mine. You won't feel anything. The irony is that you'll soon be free, but you won't be flying. Well, he will be watching, and they'll be coming after you. You won't see it coming, and in a blink you will be through, because it will happen again. This is where your story ends. It would be nice if I could tell you all the things that I have seen, but the reality is you'll end up like me, and your lifeless eyes will look like mine. You won't feel anything. The irony is that you'll soon be free, but you won't be flying. You'll be dying, and you'll be sinking like a stone. Then you're just like me, the tapestry at the bottom all alone. It would be nice if I could tell you all the things that I have seen. The reality is you'll end up like me, and your lifeless eyes will look like mine. You won't feel anything. The irony is that you'll soon be free, but you won't be flying.
So it's either the stuffed bird or the picture of the bird on the wall that he knocks down.
I was imagining just the stuffed bird.
The stuffed bird. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yes. Yeah. I wish I had it nailed down a little bit better, but
No, that was really good. And I can hear that building too. Yeah, really cool. Yeah, and you hate birds.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Why?
I don't know. I can sympathize. This bird's dead.
This bird's dead. So it's only good birds are stuffed birds.
That's right.
He doesn't mean that. I mean, my chickens aren't that bad, right?
Like I've said, I don't mind them out where they're supposed to be, but not inside.
Unless they're dead. Okay, that's fair. I guess I can meet in the middle, kind of. But, I mean, they're so cute, though.
All right. I don't know.
All right. My
what
turn,
else.
my turn.
Yes, let's get you set up.
Let's do it. All right. Here we go. My song is called The Bird and the Beast.
Wow.
I know. All right. Here we go. Step into my parlor, said the spider to the fly. My, you're such a pretty thing, I watched you passing by. A light here on my branch, little sparrow, shall we dance? Your wings must be so tired, I'd give all for the chance to fly, little birdie, fly, away from the trouble left behind. Fly, little birdie, fly, till needle, thread, and sawdust blind your eye. Pay no mind to shadows, those are just some friends of mine. Wings outstretched, they are the best at keeping you in line. Don't you shake and shiver, little sparrow, don't you quiver. All that flying must be trying, won't you stay with me forever? Fly, little birdie, fly, away from all the trouble left behind. Fly, little birdie, fly, till needle, thread, and sawdust blind your eye. If you love somebody, don't you do that thing to them. Even if you hate them, 'tis not the proper end. People always mean well, little sparrow, they don't see well. Better you stay here forever, better that you never ever fly, little birdie, fly, away from all the trouble left behind. Fly, little birdie, fly, till needle, thread, and sawdust blind your eye.
Yay! That's a nice little...
Kind of like almost like a Irish folk song
Yeah.
ish. Yeah.
So we picked the same thing?
We picked the same thing. We picked the stuffed bird.
I told you. I was like, I bet there's a good chance we picked the same thing.
I thought there might be. And I think that says a lot about what the birds represent and how big of a role they play. Because, I don't know, it seems like the knife or the shower curtain are also obvious choices. And I thought maybe like the mom's skull, like that could be a
contemplated
choice.
the dead mom.
Yeah, that's when you first said lifeless eyes, I wondered if you were going to go with the dead mom. But no, we both picked stuffed birds because they make a good song inspiration. So yeah, that was really cool. I had fun with that one. Nothing too huge on my end, but just nice little ditty.
In diddly doodly.
Oh, cute. All right, let's get back to the way we're supposed to be sitting.
All right, we'll wrap this up.
Alrighty.
All right, we're losing light.
Yeah, we are.
I don't usually do a song here, 'cause we just did some songs, and we're nearly done. Yeah.
Hooray.
Hooray.
That's good.
What a fun episode.
It was really cool to dig into this movie. I had so much fun.
And we did go slightly over 2 hours, I think, but I don't think we went any longer than we did for Final Destination, which I hope the audience doesn't take as a sign of any sort. We were intentionally trying to keep this to a regular episode while we could have easily done a double episode.
We are not capable of doing much less than this when we do these deep dives. As you can tell, we get really excited about all this information we find and want to share it with one another and with you. So,
like usual, next week we'll be doing an encore episode. We haven't picked what we're going to do for that yet, but it should be fun. I'm not sure. And in 2 weeks, we'll be doing another deep dive on another phenomenal horror movie that we love.
I'm so excited because I love all the movies on the wheel right now.
Well, and speaking of that, our Wheel of Horror, if this is your first time here, I've got a little application on my telephone that is of the cellular nature that has like a wheel spinning app. And I'm hoping someday we can get sponsored because I'll tell you the name of it and stuff like that. But until they're paying me at least $17, I'm not sure I want to be like, promoting this. But it's really helpful for like deciding. You could have a wheel at different restaurants in the area if you have a hard time picking where you want to get takeout. But Rachel and I have used it for movies for years. And
I use it to decide which TV show to watch next instead of flipping through like the shows I'm currently watching. I have a wheel and I spin it.
Yeah, it's really helpful to cut down
saver.
On the over choice society we live in, the society of too many choices.
I also use it to decide who gets the living room first when the children can't figure it out between themselves.
Yes, I have one for our children as well. Sometimes they're like, we can spin the wheel. So we have a wheel called the Wheel of Horror. And on that wheel are 13 movies, and I've added a second sequel slice. The sequel, if I land on that, we'll be spinning the wheel of sequels to see what sequel to one of our previous movies we might be watching. But the 13 movies are Smile, A Nightmare on Elm Street, Intruder, Sleepaway Camp, Child's Play, Candyman, Slumber Party Massacre, 30 Days of Night, The Strangers, Carrie, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Alien, and The Shining. Let me give these a little shuffle and a spin.
Shuffle and spin, baby.
The wheel is spinning. And in 2 weeks, we will be deep diving.
What is it?
Into Candyman.
Oh, yes. Oh, I'm so excited. Yes. All right, cool.
Which is kind of nice after our discussion about Tony Todd during Final Destination.
Yeah, I'm really excited to go back into this. And I was just reading an article about, oh no, not that. It's Clive Barker. We were just watching, weren't we?
Yeah.
In the Psycho making of, and he wrote the short story that Candyman's based off of.
Yeah.
So there's a nice little link between our two movies, between Psycho and Candyman. So, oh man, I got some work to do.
And not only will we be discussing that movie, but each of us will be writing an original song based on Candyman or inspired by Candyman. And usually we spin the wheel for a gimmick. And in this case, the gimmick is going to be spinning so much more than the freestyle.
All right. That's cool. Plenty to work with in that movie.
Yep.
So, oh yeah, that's great. I can't wait to watch that. That's going to be awesome. Super cool, man. Super cool. All right. This has been great, babe.
This has been phenomenal. I hate to hang it up, but
I know. Come find us on the internet, OMNLD Pod, wherever you get your social media. And if you know someone who likes horror and nerdy reading of cultural texts and or original music that is funny and weird and based on those movies, then send this to them. Why haven't you done it yet?
Yeah, word of mouth is big in the podcast world in terms of trying to gain listeners. So we appreciate you listening and you sharing. And please send us some comments. And
comments, questions, you can email us at omnldpod@gmail.com. And yeah, I guess we'll see you next week.
Alrighty. Talk to you later.
See ya.